that a woman should wear a head covering when praying or prophesying before the congregation, as a sign of subjection. In illustration, he says, "Does not nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it is a dishonor to him? But if a woman has long hair, it is a glory to her, because her hair is given her instead of a headdress." 1 Cor 11. 14, 15. Paul's reference to nature itself evidently included more than custom, which he mentions in verse 16 in connection with the use of a head covering by women. Hereditary characteristics also likely had a bearing on what Christians in Corinth viewed as natural. Among Europeans such as the Greeks, the hair of women, when left uncut, usually becomes considerably longer than that of man. But this is not true of the straight hair of Orientals and Indians, or of the woolly hair of blacks and Melanesians. In addition to their awareness of hereditary qualities among them, the Christians in Corinth knew that it was the general practice for men to clip their hair to a moderate length. This was common also among Jewish men. So the long uncut hair of Nazirites marked them as men who were not following the general custom. New 6. 5. On the other hand, Jewish women usually wore their hair quite long. Lu 7. 38. Joe 11. 2. And in the Greek city of Corinth, shaving a woman's head, or clipping her hair very short, was a sign of her being a slave, or of her being in disgrace for having been caught in fornication or adultery. 1 Cor 11. 6. So, when saying that nature itself taught them, Paul evidently had in mind various factors that would influence their attitude as to what was natural. In saying "does not nature itself teach you?" Paul was not personifying nature, as though it were a goddess. Rather, God has given man reasoning powers. By observing and reasoning on things as God has made them and the results from using these in various ways, man can learn much as to what is proper. It is really God that teaches, and the man with his mind properly oriented by God's word can view things in their right perspective and relationship, thereby rightly discerning what is natural or unnatural. By this means the individual can have a trained conscience in this respect and can avoid a conscience that is defiled and that approves unnatural things. Row 1. 26, 27. Tit 1. 15. 1 Cor 8. 7. Natural use of bodies. It is wrong 13-15. JG 6. 11, 12. 13. 3. 13 His many appearances, and particularly his manifesting himself to more than 500 persons at one time, provides strong testimony to the truth of his resurrection. 1 Cor 15. 3-8 His resurrection, so well attested, furnishes a guarantee to all men regarding the certainty of a future day of reckoning or judgment. Acts 17. 31. Resurrection of Christ's brothers. Those who are called and chosen and faithful, Christ's footstep followers, his brothers, who are spiritually begotten as God's children, are promised a resurrection like his. Re 17. 14. Row 6. 5. 8. 15, 16. Heb 2. 11 The Apostle Peter writes to fellow Christians. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, for according to his great mercy he gave us a new birth to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an incorruptible and undefiled and unfading inheritance. It is reserved in the heavens for you. 1 Peter 1. 3, 4. Peter also describes the hope such ones possess as precious and very grand promises, that through these you may become sharers in divine nature. 2 Peter 1. For they must undergo a change of nature, giving up human nature to obtain divine nature, thus sharing with Christ in his glory. They must die a death like Christ's, maintaining integrity and giving up human life forever. And then they receive immortal, incorruptible bodies like Christ's by resurrection. Row 6. 3-5. 1 Cor 15. 50-57. 2 Cor 5. 1-3 The Apostle Paul explains that it is not the body that is resurrected, but rather, he likens their experience to the planting and sprouting of a seed, in that God gives it a body just as it has pleased him. 1 Cor 15. 35-40 It is the soul, the person, that is resurrected, with a body to suit the environment into which God resurrects him. In the case of Jesus Christ, he gave up his human life as a ransom sacrifice for the benefit of mankind. The 40th Psalm is applied to him by the inspired writer of the book of Hebrews, who represents Jesus as saying, when he came into the world as God's Messiah, "Sacrifice and offering you did not want, but you prepared a body for me." Heb 10:5. Jesus himself said, "For a fact, the bread that I shall give is my flesh in behalf of the life of the world." Job 6:51. It follows that Christ could not take his body back again in the resurrection, thereby taking back the sacrifice offered to God for mankind. Throw away the tackling, and lascio textoi acute miritra longo. Shippy 934 sometimes followed when riding out a gale. Act 27. 29, 30, 40. A sounding lead was used to determine the depth of the water. Act 27. 28. The Apostle Paul uses the term anchor figuratively when he speaks to his spiritual brothers in Christ, calling the hope set before them an anchor for the soul. Hope 6:19. Compare F4. 13, 14. Ches 1. 6-8. Shippy Shephi from a root that means abound. A Simeonite whose son was one of the tribal chieftains who extended their pasture grounds during Hezekiah's reign. 1 Ch 4. 24, 37-41. Shipmite possibly, of belonging to Shechem. The designation for Zabdi, David's manager of the wine supply. 1 Ch 27. 27. It could indicate that Zabdi came from either Sibmath 1 Sa 30. 28 or Shechem. New 34. 10, 11. Shipra are agreeable, polished, elegant. The Greek Septuagint reads Sepra in both Exodus 1. 15 and 2. 21. The Masoretic text, however, reads Shipra and Zipra respectively. The Aramaic form of the name is Sapira. Shipra was one of the Hebrew midwives who, together with Pa'ah, was commanded by Pharaoh to kill all the Hebrew male babies immediately at birth. Being a God-fearing woman, however, and having respect for the sanctity of human life Ge 9. 6, she preserved the boy babies alive and was blessed by Jehovah with a family of her own. X 1. 15-21. See midwife. Shiptan Shiptan from a root meaning judge. Father of Kemuel, the chieftain representing Ephraim when the promised land was divided among the tribes of Israel. New 34. 17, 18, 24. Shisha. Father of Solomon's secretaries Elihareph and Ahijah. 1 Kai 4. 3. Caesareno. 2. Shishak. An Egyptian king that is known as Shishonkai from Egyptian records. Shishak, regarded as the founder of the Libyan dynasty, is generally credited with a rule of about 21 years. His son Asorkani succeeded him to the throne. When Jeroboam fled to Egypt to escape the wrath of King Solomon, Shishak ruled there. 1 Kai 11. 40 some years later, in the 5th year of Solomon's successor Rehoboam 993 BCE, Shishak invaded Judah with a mighty force of chariots and horsemen. Duration of the history of Judah and of Israel begun in 1 Kings. It reaches to the destruction of Samaria and then of Jerusalem. Due to unfaithfulness, the writing of it was likely completed in Egypt about 27 years after Jerusalem's destruction by Babylon. After Elijah, Elisha serves as Jehovah's prophet. Elijah predicts Ahaziah's death. He also calls down fire upon 2 disrespectful military chiefs and their companies of 50 sent to get the prophet. 1. 2-17. Elijah is taken away in a windstorm. Elisha receives his official garment. 2. 1-13. Elisha divides the Jordan and heals water in Jericho. His inspired advice saves the allied armies of Israel, Judah, and Edom from perishing for lack of water and results in defeat of Moabites. He increases a widow's oil supply, resurrects a Shunammite woman's son, renders poisonous stew harmless, multiplies a gift of bread and grain, heals Naaman of leprosy, announces that Naaman's leprosy would come upon greedy Gehazi and his offspring, and causes a borrowed axe to flow. 2. 14. 6. 7. Elisha warns the king of Israel in advance of surprise attacks by the Syrians. A Syrian force comes to seize him but is stricken with temporary mental blindness. The Syrians besiege Samaria, and Elisha is blamed for the resulting famine. He foretells the end of the famine. 6. 8. 7. 2. The commission given to Elijah is completed when Elisha tells Hazael that he will become king of Syria and sends a messenger to anoint Jehu as king over Israel. 8. 7-13. 9. 1-13 Jehu acts against Ahab's house, eradicating Baal worship from Israel. 9. 14. 10. 28 Elisha, on his deathbed, is visited by Jehu's grandson King Jehoash. He foretells 3 victories over Syria. 13. 14-19 Israel's disrespect for Jehovah leads to exile in Assyria. The calf worship started by Jeroboam continues during the reigns of Jehu and his offspring. Jehoahaz, Jehoash, Jeroboam 2, and Zechariah 10. 29, 31. 13. 6, 10, 11. 14. 23, 24. 15. 8, 9 During Israel's final days, King Zechariah is assassinated by Shallum, Shallum by Menahem, Menaham's son Pekah by Pekah, and Pekah by Hoshi. 15. 8-30 During Pekah's reign, Tiglath-Pileser III, king of Assyria, exiles many Israelites. In the 9th year of Hoshi, Samaria is destroyed and Israel is taken into exile because of disrespecting Jehovah. Israel's territory is populated by other peoples. 15. 29. 17. 1-41 Religious reforms in Judah bring no lasting. 25. 1 ch 14. 13-16 During his reign David fought numerous other battles with the Philistines and succeeded in subduing them. On one occasion, however, he nearly lost his life. 2 8. 1. 21. 15-22. 1 ch 18. 1. 20. 4-8. From Solomon's reign onward. For years after that there is no record of warfare with the Philistines. David's son Solomon enjoyed a peaceful reign 1037-998 BCE and his dominions extended as far as the Philistine city of Gaza. 1 Kai 4. 21-25. 2 ch 9. 26. Some 20 years after the 10-tribe kingdom came into existence, the Philistines occupied Gibbethon, a city in Dan. While trying to take the city, Israel's king Nadab was killed by Baasha, who subsequently began to reign as king. Jos 19. 40, 44. 1 Kai 15. 27, 28 Gibbethon was still under Philistine control some 24 years later when Omri, army chief of Israel, encamped against it. 1 Kai 16. 15-17. While Jehoshaphat reigned 936 c. 911 BCE the Philistines were evidently subject to him, for they brought gifts and tribute. 2 ch 17. 11 But, during the Rulotextoi Acute Muritra Longo, Philologus 634, however, a larger fulfillment evidently came after the Israelites returned from the Babylonian exile. Notes commentator C.F. Keel. Alexander the Great and his successors set many of the Jewish prisoners of war in their lands at liberty. Compare the promise of King Demetrius to Jonathan, I will send away in freedom such of the Judeans as have been made prisoners, and reduced to slavery in our land, Josephus, Ant. 13. 2, 3, and portions of the Philistine and Phoenician lands were for a time under Jewish sway. Commentary on the Old Testament, 1973, Volume X, Joel, p. 224 Compare Arb 19, 20. Noteworthy, too, is the fact that Alexander the Great took the Philistine city of Gaza. Many of the inhabitants were slain, and the survivors were sold into slavery. A number of other prophecies likewise pointed to the execution of Jehovah's vengeance upon the Philistines. Isra 14. 31. J 25. 9, 20. 47. 1-7. Es 25. 15, 16, coming head of the entire empire. Upon his death Tiglath-Pileser III was succeeded by Shalmaneser V. More details might be known concerning this king were it not for the fact that a still later king, Esarhaddon, caused Tiglath-Pileser's inscriptions to be mutilated, a rare affront elsewhere unknown in Assyrian history. Tikva Hope 1. Father-in-law of Huldah the prophetess, son of Haraz. 2 Kai 22. 14 The name is spelled Tokath according to the Masoretic text at 2 Chronicles 34. 22. 2. Father of a certain Josiah who lived in the time of Ezra. Ez 10. 10, 11, 15. See Josiah. Tilgath-Pilneser. See Tiglath-Pileser III. Tilon, a son of Shimon in the tribe of Judah. 1 Ch 4. 20. Timaeus T. Middle.Measonid. Father of Bartimaeus the blind beggar healed by Jesus. Mr. 10. 46. Time S. See acceptable time. Appointed times of the nations. Calendar. Time indefinite. The Hebrew word olam carries the thought of indefinite or uncertain time. Lexicographer Gesenius defines it as meaning hidden time, that is obscure and long, of which the beginning or end is uncertain or indefinite. A Hebrew and English lexicon of the Old Testament, translated by E. Robinson, 1836, p. 746 accordingly, expressions such as time indefinite ps 25. 6. Indefinitely lasting Hab 3. 6. Evol G 6. 4. A long time ago, of long ago Jos 24. 2. PR 22. 28. 23. 10. And long-lasting EC 12. 5. Appropriately convey the thought of the original language term. The word Lam is at times associated with that which is everlasting. 1 Kai 2. 45. FTN the prophet Isaiah wrote, Jehovah, the creator of the extremities of the earth, is a God o textoi acute miritra longo, time of the Amdalevno 3 together, and may be rendered age during, and forever age abiding and beyond ro, and time indefinite, even forever NW. Concerning the earth, the psalmist declared, it will not be made to tot at a time indefinite, or forever. PS 104. 5. The Hebrew term enizach can also denote everlastingness. Among the ways it may be rendered are forever job 4. 20. 14. 20, perpetually Isla 57. 16, and always PS 9. 18. Jerusalem. Upon his return, he found deplorable conditions among the Jews. Eliashib the high priest had made a dining hall in the courtyard of the temple for the use of Tobiah, the very man who earlier had viciously opposed the work of Nehemiah. Immediately Nehemiah took action. He threw all of Tobiah's furniture outside the dining hall and instructed that the dining hall be cleansed. Additionally, Nehemiah took measures to ensure the contributions for the Levites and enforced strict Sabbath observance. He also administered discipline against those who had taken foreign wives, whose sons by these women were not even able to speak the Jewish tongue. And I began to find fault with them and called down evil upon them, and strike some men of them and pull out their hair and make them swear by God. You should not give your daughters to their sons, and you should not accept any of their daughters for your sons or yourselves. Nehemiah's finding fault with these men doubtless was his reproving and rebuking them by means of God's law, exposing their wrong action. These men were bringing the restored nation into disfavor with God, after God had kindly repatriated them from Babylon to restore true worship at Jerusalem. Nehemiah called down evil upon them, meaning that he recited the judgments of God's law against such violators. He struck them, probably not personally, but ordered them flogged as in official judicial action. He pulled out a portion of their hair. It was a symbol of moral indignation and ignominy before the people. Compare as 9. 3. Nehemiah then chased away the grandson of high priest Eliashib, who had become a son-in-law of Sanballat the Horonite. NE 13. 1-28. Nehemiah, an outstanding example. Nehemiah stands out as a sterling example of faithfulness and devotion. He was unselfish, leaving behind a prominent position as cupbearer in the courtyard of Artaxerxes to undertake the rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls. As there were many enemies, Nehemiah willingly exposed himself to danger in behalf of his people and true worship. Not only did he direct the work of repairing the wall of Jerusalem, but he also had an active, personal share in the task. He wasted no time, was courageous and fearless, relied fully on Jehovah, and was textually acute miritra longo. Nehemiah, Book of 488 in this case is not reckoned as starting in Nisan March-April, for Chislev of the 20th year could not then precede Nisan mentioned at any one of the same 20th year. So it may be that Nehemiah used his own count of time, reckoning the lunar year as beginning with Tishri September-October, which month Jews today recognize as the beginning of their civil year. Another possibility is that the reign of the king was reckoned from the actual date that the monarch ascended the throne. This could be so even though the Babylonian scribes continue to reckon the years of the Persian king's reign on their customary basis of Nisan to Nisan count, as their cuneiform tablets show they did. Reliable historical evidence in the fulfillment of Bible prophecy point to 455 BCE as comes at the end of the 1,000 years. The devil is temporarily loosed, then, together with all those joining his attack on the camp of the holy ones and the beloved city, he is completely annihilated. Re 19. 11. 20. 10. Turning back to events during the 1,000 years. The vision depicts the resurrection and judgment that take place under the rule of Christ and his bride, the New Jerusalem. The beauty and grandeur of this heavenly city is described, with the healing, life-giving benefits it brings to mankind. Re 20. 11. 22. 5. In conclusion, Jehovah God speaks of coming quickly with reward according to each one's work. As the faithful and true witness, Jesus bears testimony to the completion textually acute miritra longo 800 disclosure of God's view of conditions as well as a foreview of what he permits and what he will accomplish through Christ during the Lord's Day. A series of visions recorded by the Apostle John in about 96 CE. The glorified Christ gives loving counsel to fellow kingmakers 1. 3. 22. The Ephesus congregation has endured but has left its first love. The spiritually rich Smyrna congregation is encouraged to remain faithful in the face of tribulation. The Pergamon congregation has held fast to Christ's name under persecution, but has tolerated sectarianism. The Thyatira congregation has a record of increased activity, but it has tolerated a Jezebel influence. The Sardes congregation is dead spiritually. It must wake up. The Philadelphia congregation, which has kept Christ's word, is urged to keep holding fast what it has. The Laodicea congregation is lukewarm. Let it obtain from Christ what is needed for spiritual healing. A vision of Jehovah's heavenly presence 4. 1. 5. 14. Jehovah is seen in awesome splendor on his throne, surrounded by 24 elders and 4 living creatures. He holds a scroll sealed with 7 seals. The Lamb is declared worthy to take the scroll and open it. The Lamb opens 6 seals of the scroll. 6. 1-17 As he opens the first seal, a rider on a white horse receives a crown and goes forth conquering, and to complete his conquest the opening of the next 3 seals introduces 3 more horsemen, bringing war, famine, and death to mankind. The 5th seal is opened. Those martyred for Christ cry for their blood to be avenged. Each is given a white robe at the opening of the 6th seal. A great earthquake heralds the day of the wrath of God and of the Lamb. The 4 winds of the earth are held back. 7. 1-17 John hears that the 4 winds will be held back until the slaves of God are sealed. The number of those sealed is 144,000. Then, John sees a great, unnumbered crowd out of all nations. These come out of the great tribulation. The 7th seal is opened. 8. 1. 11. 14 There is a half-hour silence. 5 From the altar is hurled to the earth. 7 Angels prepare to blow trumpets. The first 4 trumpet blasts herald plagues with the transient value of silver, and to be more highly estimated, are the wisdom, discipline, and understanding that come from Jehovah. PR 3. 13, 14. 8. 10, 19. 16. 16 Also, the scriptures use silver in a number of symbolic senses. EC 12. 6. ISA 60. 17. DA 2. 32. 1 Co 3. 12. Psi means semi-middle dot on hearing. 1. The second of Jacob's 12 sons, so named because, as his mother Leah said, Jehovah has listened, in that I was hated and so he gave me also this one. GE 29. 32, 33. 35. 23-26. 48. 5. X1. 1-4. 1ch2. 1, 2. When his father Jacob was encamped near Shechem, Simeon, together with his next younger brother Levi, displayed a vengeful anger that was unreasonably harsh and cruel. Arbitrarily, without their father's knowledge or consent, they set about avenging the honor of their younger sister Dinah by slaughtering the Shechemites, bringing ostracism upon Jacob's whole family. GE 34. 1-31. Simeon was later involved in wrongdoing when he and his brothers planned to kill Joseph. GE 37. 12-28, 36. Whether Simeon, as second oldest, was or was not the ringleader in this plot on Joseph's life is not stated. Years later, when Joseph as food administrator of Egypt was testing out his brothers, Simeon was selected by Joseph to be bound and imprisoned until the other brothers brought Benjamin down to Egypt. GE 42. 14-24, 34-36. 43. 15, 23. Shortly before Jacob's death, when blessing his sons, Jacob recalled with disapproval the violence of Simeon and Levi in connection with the Shechemites many years earlier, saying, "Instruments of violence are their slaughter weapons. Into their intimate group do not come, O my soul. With their congregation O textoi acute mirica longo." Toward the end of the 1st century CE, the resurrected Jesus Christ in a very touching way showed keen interest in his anointed followers still on earth. How? By directing the aged Apostle John to write letters to the 7 congregations that were in the district of Asia. Re 1. 1-4. Those letters contained much needed encouragement, counsel, and warning. Today, only ruins are found on the sites of most of the cities where those congregations were located. Yet, these give evidence that what was written deals. 18. Korah is listed at Genesis 36. 16 as a son of Eliphaz and grandson of Esau. However, the name does not appear among the descendants of Eliphaz at Genesis 36. 11, 12 or 1 Chronicles 1. 36. The Samaritan Pentateuch omits the name at Genesis 36. 16, and some scholars suggest its appearance in the Masoretic text may be the result of a copyist's error. 2. One of the sons of Hebron of the tribe of Judah. 1ch2. 43. 3. A Kohathite Levite of the family of Jah. X6. 16, 18, 21. 1ch6. 1, 2, 22. Amminadab was perhaps an alternative name for Shah. During Israel's wilderness trek, Korah rebelled against the authority of Moses and Aaron, doing so in league with the Reubenites Dathan, Abiram, and On, as well as 250 chieftains of the assembly or men of fame. New 16. 1, 2. They contended that the whole assembly are all of them holy and Jehovah is in their midst, asking, "Why, then, should you lift yourselves up above the congregation of Jehovah?" New 16. 3-11. Moses later sent to call Dathan and Abiram, but they refused to be present, thinking Moses had no right to summon them. New 16. 12-15. Korah, his assembly, and high priest Aaron were told to present themselves before Jehovah, all supplied with fire holders and burning incense. New 16. 16, 17. The following day Korah and the 250 men with him, or carrying fire holders with burning incense, stood at the entrance of the tent of meeting with Moses and Aaron. Jehovah's glory appeared to all the assembly, and God spoke to Moses and Aaron, telling them to separate themselves from the midst of the assembly, that I may exterminate them in an instant. However, Moses and Aaron interceded for the people, and God then directed Moses to have the assembly get away from the tabernacles of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. This was done. New 16. 18-27. Shortly thereafter, the earth proceeded to open its mouth and to swallow up them and their households and all humankind that belonged to Korah and all the goods. They and all that belonged to them went down alive into Sheol, and the earth covered them over. New 16. 28-34. Those who were before the tent of meeting with the incense-filled fire holders did not escape, for a fire came out from Jehovah and proceeded to consume the 250 men offering the incense. New 16. 35 Korah himself was with them at that time, and thus perished in that fire from God. New 26. 10. The fire holders of those who conspired with Korah were made into metal plates with which to overlay the altar. This was done because they presented them before time indefinite would be a fitting picture of devastating destruction. Issa 34. 9, 10. This description also helps to identify the substance, for Edom was near the Dead Sea, and even today bitumen is occasionally washed up on its shores, evidently coming from deposits now covered by the sea. According to Exodus 2. 3. The papyrus ark in which Moses was concealed was coated with both bitumen and pitch. Jewish commentator Rashi suggested that this meant bitumen on the inside and pitch on the outside. Or it could mean a mixture of two different consistencies of the same basic substance. For instance, in The Land and the Book, W. M. Thompson suggests that Exodus 2. 3 reveals the process by which they prepare the bitumen. The mineral, as found in this country, melts readily enough by itself. But then, when cold, it is as brittle as glass. It must be mixed with tar while melting, and in that way it forms a hard, glassy wax, perfectly impervious to water. Revised by J. Grand, 1910, p. 200. The Greek Septuagint uses the single term amiddle for middle apis middle a mixture of asphalt and pitch. In parts of the Middle East, mineral pitch has been used even in recent times as a coating for certain sailing vessels. Pithom Pitom from Egyptian, meaning House Temple of Atum. One of two storage cities built by the enslaved Israelites in Egypt, the other being Ramses. X1. 11. No positive identification of the site has been made. Archaeologists have apparently been influenced in their conclusions by the popular view that the pharaoh of the Israelite oppression was Ramses II, a view that is not soundly founded. See Ramses, Ramesses. Pithom Python. The descendant of King Saul through Jonathan and Merib Baal Mephibosheth. 1 ch. 8. 33-35. 9. 39-41. Pity. A tender feeling toward persons in a state of suffering or in need, or toward anything that may have been treated in a harsh manner. The plural noun middle.com denotes pity, mercies, or inward emotions. G 43. 14, 30. 1 ch. 21. 13. PS 40. 11. See mercy. In Greek, the verb splag middle.my means be moved with pity or compassion, have or feel pity. This term is drawn from the noun splagna, literally meaning intestines. Ac 1. 18. Since strong emotions can have an effect on the abdominal area of the body, the Greek noun splagna is often used to denote tender affections, or tender compassions. See affection. Jehovah God set the example in manifesting pity for those in distress, and he can move men to show this loving feeling. That is why King Solomon could his sufferings and death, while it also comforted his followers and strengthened their faith. It showed that Jesus had God's approval, and it was a foreview of his future glory and kingdom power. It presaged the presence of Christ, when his kingly authority would be complete. Transgression. See sin, I translator. See interpretation. Transportation. A means of conveyance from one place to another. Ancient modes and vehicles of transport varied with the circumstances of travelers and their destination or the places to which articles were taken. The camel's ability to subsist on the common plants of the desert and to go without water for prolonged periods made it an ideal animal for travel in arid regions. Camels served both as mounts and for transporting merchandise from place to place. GE 37. 25-28. JG 6. 3-5. 7. 12. 1 Chi 10. Two other animals employed as mounts or beasts of burden were the Asjos 15. 18. JG 5. 10. 10. 4. 12. 14. 1 Sir 25. 42. Issa 30. 6. the mule 1 Chi 1. 33, and the horse 1 Chi 4. 26. Act 23. 23, 24, 31-33. Ships were used extensively. 2 Ch 9. 21. Es 27. 9. John 1. 3. Act 20. 13-15. 27. 1-44 wagons were employed to transport both goods and persons. GE 46. 5. New 7. 1-9 chariots or litters, at times richly decorated, served as a regular means of transport for royalty or men of high station. 2 Chi 10. 15. Ca 3. 6-10. Ac 8. 26-31 and the common people usually travelled on foot. Lu 24. 13-15. O textoi acute miritra longo. Treasury 1122 severe locust plague on Egypt. Pharaoh's servants asked, how long will this man prove to be as a snare to us? X 10. 7 The previous plagues had all come at the announcement of Moses, and therefore, he had proved to be as a snare, that is, a cause of calamity or ruin to the Egyptians. So that they would not fall into the trap of idolatry, Jehovah repeatedly warned the Israelites about allowing the Canaanites to remain in the promised land. X 23. 32, 33 Because Noah possessed strong faith that he, in implicit obedience, did according to all that God had commanded him. He did just so. GE 6. 22 It was because of his unswerving faith in Jehovah that the Christian writer of the book of Hebrews included him in that so great a cloud of witnesses. He wrote, by faith Noah, after being given divine warning of things not yet beheld, showed godly fear and constructed an ark for the saving of his household. And through this faith he condemned the world, and he became an heir of the righteousness that is according to faith. Heb 11. 7. 12. 1. 7 days before the flood waters began to fall, Jehovah instructed Noah to gather the animals into the ark. On the 7th day of that week, Noah went in, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him, into the ark ahead of the waters of the deluge. After that Jehovah shut the door behind him. On that very day the flood arrived and destroyed them all. GE 7. 1-16. Lu 17. 27. With the ark's occupants was preserved the thread of human and animal life. Also, true worship survived, and by means of Noah and his family God carried through the history of creation, along with a system of counting time back to man's creation and the original language later called Hebrew. Noah kept an accurate log of important events during his stay in the ark. GE 7. 11, 12, 24. 8. 2-6, 10, 12-14. Post-flood blessing and rainbow covenant. After about 1 year in the ark, Noah and his family came out onto an earth freshly washed clean. The ark had come to rest in the mountains of the Ararat range. In appreciation for Jehovah's loving kindness, mercy, and protective hand, Noah constructed an altar and offered up some of all the clean beasts and of all the clean flying creatures as a sacrifice to Jehovah. Jehovah was pleased and revealed to Noah that no more would the earth be cursed, nor would God deal everything o textoi acute miritra longo. Nob 508 or reminder of this covenant. GE 9. 8-17. Isra 54. 9. Noah's intoxication. Noah lived for 350 years after the flood. The account reports, candidly and honestly. Now Noah started off as a farmer and proceeded to plant a vineyard. And he began drinking of the wine and became intoxicated, and so he uncovered himself in the midst of his tent. GE 9. 20, 21 This does not indicate that Noah was a habitual drunkard. The Bible reports this instance to give the background for the incident that accompanied it, which event had a profound effect on world history. Before the flood, Noah was not indulging in the drinking of that wicked cess for food according to the terms of the Mosaic law. The 14. 5, 6 The flesh of this creature was one of the meats regularly provided for King Solomon's table. 1 Chi 4. 22, 23. Rogelim Romidal.Gelim. A town in Gilead and home of David's friend Barzillai. 2 17. 27-29. 19. 31, 32. Some geographers tentatively place Rogelim at Bersinia, about 7 km 4.5 MWSW of Ibid. Wadi Urajala, near there, possibly preserves the name Rogelim. Rogar. Second listed son of Shema in the genealogy of Asher. 1 Ch 7. 30, 34. Roll. See scroll, roll. Romam Teiza Romidal.Mam Teiza. A son of Heman selected by lot during David's reign to head the last of the 24 Levitical groups of musicians at the sanctuary. 1 Ch 25. 1, 4, 5, 9, 31. Roman. Originally, and in the restrictive sense, one who lived in the city of Rome, Italy. Act 2. 10. Row 1. 7. With the expansion of the empire the name took on broader meanings. Sometimes the Romans referred to the imperial authority that ruled. Roman procedure meant that authority's methods of rule. Joe 11. 48. Act 25. 16. 28. 17. At other times a Roman simply meant anyone having Roman citizenship, regardless of his nationality or place of birth. Act 16. 21. In the latter case one could become a Roman by purchasing citizenship, as in the instance of the military commander Claudius Lysias. Or one might be born a Roman, that is, be a Roman citizen from birth. The Apostle Paul was such a one, for although he was a Jew by nationality, and born in the Cilician city of Tarsus hundreds of miles from Italy, from birth he was a Roman. Act 21. 39. 22. 3, 25-28. 23. 26, 27. See citizen, citizenship. Being a Roman citizen carried with it many privileges and protections. After Macedonia was conquered in 168 BCE, Roman citizens for the most part were exempted from paying taxes. The Lex Valeria and the Lex Porcia, enacted at various times between 509 and 195 BCE, exempted Roman citizens from scourging. The Lex Valeria provided such exemption when the citizen appealed to the people. The Lex Porcia, without such appeal. At a later date, appeals o textui acute miritra longo, Romans, lettered by the Bible writers, may mean the expanse of atmosphere that surrounds the earth in which clouds float. Isla 45. 8, or it may mean the apparent vault or dome over the earth that is blue in the daytime and star-studded at night. PS 89. 37. In most cases the writer evidently is merely referring to what is high above man without specifying which aspect of the sky is involved. PS 57. 10. 108. 4. The fine dust particles in the atmosphere, the molecules of water vapor, and, to some extent, the molecules of other gases in the atmosphere, such as oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide, scatter the rays of light, the blue rays being most diffused, which gives the clear sky its characteristic blue color. Fine dust particles also play a large part in producing clouds, the water vapor collecting around these particles. The Hebrew word shachak sky is also translated film of dust, cloud, cloudy sky. It is apparently from a root meaning pound fine. 2 22. 43. Jehovah speaks of himself as the one who beat out the skies hard like a molten mirror. Job 37. 18. The particles forming the atmosphere are indeed compressed under the pull of gravity, and their outer limits are within set boundaries, gravity preventing their escape from the earth. Ge 1. 6-8. They do reflect the sunlight in a manner comparable to a mirror. Because of this the sky looks bright, whereas without an atmosphere an observer on the earth would see only blackness in the sky, with the heavenly bodies glowing brilliantly on a black background, as is the case with the atmosphereless moon. Astronauts can observe the Earth's atmosphere from outer space as an illuminated, glowing halo. Jehovah used figurative language in warning Israel that, for disobedience, the skies overhead would become copper and the earth beneath, iron, and powder and dust would be the rain of their land. Doubtless under such conditions of lack of rain the shut up, cloudless skies would become reddish, copper, in color, because increased dust particles in the atmosphere tend to diffuse the blue light to the point that the red waves are more prominent, just as the setting sun appears red, because of the greater depth or thickness of atmosphere that the sun's rays must traverse. De 28. 23, 24. Compare 1 Chi 8. 35, where heaven is used as referring to the expanse. Another Hebrew word occasionally rendered skies is shamidl.mayim heavens. De 28. 23 Similarly, the Greek middle.numbers, literally heaven, is also translated sky. When Jesus ascended toward heaven, a cloud caught him away from the disciples' vision. As they gazed into the sky, angels appeared and said, "Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking into the sky? This Jesus who was received up from you into the sky will come thus in the same manner as you have beheld him going into the sky." Act 1. 9 Did the power to speak new languages did not forget their original tongue, Hebrew. God's Spirit here was also effecting a very different purpose, not of confusing and scattering, but of enlightening and drawing together persons of honest heart into Christian unity. Act 2. 1-21, 37-42 From then on God's covenant people were a multilingual people, but the barrier created by language difference was overcome because their minds were filled with the common or mutual language of the truth. In unity they spoke in praise of Jehovah and his righteous purposes by Christ Jesus. Thus, the promise at Zephaniah 3:9 saw a fulfillment as Jehovah God gave peoples the change to a pure language, in order for them all to call upon the name of Jehovah, in order to serve him shoulder to shoulder. Compare Issa 66. 18. Zakat 23. Re 7. 4, 9, 10. For this to be so, they should all speak in agreement and be fitly united in the same mind and in the same line of thought. 1 Co 1. 10. The purity of the language spoken by the Christian congregation was also because of its being free from words expressing malicious bitterness, anger, wrath, screaming, and similar abusive language, as well as being free from deceit, obscenity, and corruptness. F4. 29, 31. 1 P 3. 10 Christians were to put language to its most exalted use, praising their Creator and upbuilding their neighbor with wholesome, truthful speech, especially the good news about God's kingdom. Mount 24. 14. Tick 2. 7, 8. Heb 13. 15. Compare PS 51. 15. 109. 30. As the time neared for God to execute his judicial decision upon all the nations of the world, Jehovah would enable many more to speak that pure language. The Bible began to be written in the Hebrew language, and some portions were later recorded in Aramaic. Then, in the 1st century of the Common Era, the remainder of the sacred scriptures were written in Koine, or Common Greek, though Matthew wrote his Gospel first in Hebrew. By then a translation had also been made of the Hebrew scriptures into Greek. Called the Septuagint, it was not an inspired translation but, nevertheless, was used by the Christian writers of the Bible in numerous quotations. See inspiration. So, too, the Christian Greek scriptures and eventually the whole Bible came to be translated into other languages, among the earliest being Latin, Syriac, Ethiopic, Arabic, and Persian. As of the present time, the Bible, the whole or in part, is available in well over 3,000 languages. This has facilitated the proclamation of the good news and o text to acute miritra longo. Last days 205 This city had a major disadvantage. 29-31. That the faith of others was not an absolute essential for Jesus to perform miraculous acts can be seen in his healing the severed ear of the high priest's slave, part of the crowd that came to arrest Jesus. Luke 22. 50, 51. The resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead to spirit life was the greatest demonstration ever of God's power. Without it, Christian faith would be in vain, his followers would be of all men most to be pitied. 1 Cor 15. 12-19 It was the act most consistently recounted by Jesus' disciples and the greatest single factor in strengthening faith. Distance had not hindered Jesus' exercise of power when on earth. Mount 8. 5-13. Job 4. 46-53, and now, from his heavenly position, Jesus anointed his followers with God's Spirit on Pentecost, enabling them to do powerful works in his absence. He thereby authenticated their testimony concerning his resurrection. Act 4:33. Heb 2:3, 4, and also gave proof that these were God's approved people, his congregation. Act 2:1-4, 14-36, 43. 3. 11-18. The death of his son as a human had not shortened Jehovah's hand, as the many miracles, signs, and portents performed by the apostles and others testified. Act 4:29, 30. 6. 8. 14. 3. 19. 11, 12. The powerful works they performed were like those of their master, healing the lame. Act 3:1-9. 14. 8-10 and Act 5:12-16. 28. 7-9, raising the dead. Act 9:36-41. 20. 9-11, casting out demons. Act 8:6-7. 16. 16-18, doing so without seeking personal benefit or honor for themselves. Act 3:12. 8. 9-24. 13. 15-17. Through them God expressed judgments against wrongdoers, even as he had done through the earlier prophets, fostering due respect toward himself and his representatives. Act 5:1-11. 13. 8-12. New abilities were granted them, such as the ability to speak in foreign languages and interpret them. This, too, was for a beneficial purpose, for they were soon to extend the preaching work beyond Israel, telling Jehovah's wonderful works among the nations. 1 Co 12. 4-11. PS 96. 3. GE 35. 1-4. In Israel the idolatrous use of teraphim existed in the days of the judges as well as the kings. JG 17. 5. 18. 14, 17, 20. Ho 3. For it is not likely, though, that the teraphim served for purposes of inheritance in Israel, in view of God's express command against the making of images. X 20. For also, the prophet Samuel spoke of teraphim in parallel with uncanny power, comparing the use of both to pushing ahead presumptuously. 1 Sa 15. 23, and the teraphim were among the appendages of idolatry cleared out of Judah and Jerusalem by faithful King Josiah. 2 Kai 23. 24. Hence, the fact that Michal, the wife of David, had a teraphim image among her possessions suggests that her heart was not complete with Jehovah, and that David either did not know about her having the teraphim image or else tolerated it because she was the daughter of King Saul. 1 Sa 19. 12, 13. Teresh. One of two doorkeepers in the Persian palace who conspired against King Ahasuerus. Upon learning of the plot, Mordecai informed Queen Esther who, in turn, revealed it to the king. Teresh and his accomplice were hanged on a stake, and the incident was entered in the royal records. As 2. 21-23. 6. 1, 2. Tertius from Lat. Meaning third. The writer or transcriber of Paul's letter to the Romans, and the only one of Paul's secretaries identified by name. Tertius inserts his own personal greetings to the Romans. Row 16. 22. Datullus Tullas from Lat. Diminutive of Tertius. A public speaker who presented the Jews' case against Paul before Governor Felix in Caesarea. Of what Luke recorded, much of Datullus' statement personally praises Felix, with only a very brief accusation against Paul, attempting to implicate him with the frequent seditions against Rome. Act 24. 1-8. Nothing definite is known as to Datullus' nationality, whether Jewish or Roman. Testicles. Male genital glands. God's law to Israel barred from the priesthood a man having his testicles broken, as one of several disqualifying physical defects. Law 21. 17-21, 23. This high standard for the priesthood was in harmony with the holiness of the office of the priests as representatives of Jehovah's holiness before Israel. It likewise accords with the fact that Israel's priesthood symbolized the heavenly priesthood of Christ and his congregation of under-priests, among whom there is found no blemish. Heb 7. 26. F5. 27. Re 14. 1, 5. 20. And through the 6 sons of Keturah, other nations traced their ancestry back to Abraham. GE 25. 1-4. 1ch1. 28-33. Row 4. 16-18. From Abraham's son Isaac sprang the Israelites and Edomites. GE 25. 21-26. In a much larger, spiritual sense, Abraham became a father of many nations, for persons of many national groups, including those of the Christian congregation in Rome, by reason of their faith and obedience could call Abraham their father, the father of all those having faith. Row 4. 11, 16-18. See Israel No. 2. How God views the nations. As the Creator and universal sovereign, God is within his absolute rights in setting the nation's territorial boundaries if he chooses to do so, as he did with Ammon, Edom, and Israel. 2. 17-22. 32. 8. 2ch 20. 6, 7. Acts 17. 26. The Most High and Lofty One over all the earth is not to be compared in greatness with nations of mankind. 10. 6, 7. Actually the nations are as but a drop from the bucket in his sight. Issa 40. 15, 17. So when such nations rage and mutter against Jehovah, as when they put Jesus to death on a torture stake, he only laughs at them in derision and confounds and destroys their presumptuous counsel against him. PS2. 1, 2, 4, 5. 33. 10. 59. 8. Darfur. 32b, 34, 35. Act 4. 24-28. Yet for all of Jehovah's superlative greatness and power, no one can rightly charge him with being unjust in his treatment of national groups. It makes no difference whether God is dealing with a single man or a whole nation, he never compromises his righteous principles. Job 34. 29. If a nation is repentant, as were the people of Nineveh, he blesses them. John 3. 5-10. But if they turn to doing bad, even though in a covenant with him, he destroys them. Jer 18. 7-10. When an issue arises, Jehovah sends his prophets with a message of warning. Jer 1. 5, 10. Ez 2. 3. 33. 7. God is not partial toward any, great or small. 10. 17. 2ch 19. 7. Act 10. 34, 35. Therefore, when whole nations refused to recognize and obey Jehovah's for mankind, because death was not the natural, purposed thing for humans. Rather, God indicated that he purposed the earth to be full of living humans, not a deteriorating, dying race. His work was perfect, hence without flaw, imperfection, or sickness. 32. For Jehovah blessed the first human pair, telling them to multiply and fill the earth. Ge 1. 28. Such blessing certainly did not include sickness and death. God set no limited lifespan for man, but he told Adam that disobedience is what would cause death. This implies that man would otherwise live forever. Disobedience would incur God's disfavor and remove his blessing, bringing a curse. Ge 2. 17. 3. 17-19. Consequently, death was introduced into the human race by the transgression of Adam. Row 5. 12. Because of their father's sinfulness and resultant imperfection, Adam's offspring could not get a heritage of everlasting life from him. In fact, not even a hope of living forever. Neither can a rotten tree produce fine fruit, said Jesus. Mount 7. 17, 18. Job 14. 1, 2. The resurrection was brought in, or added, to overcome this disability for those of Adam's children who would desire to be obedient to God. Purpose of the resurrection. The resurrection shows forth not only Jehovah's unlimited power and wisdom, but also his love and his mercy, and vindicates him as the preserver of those who serve him.